Peep silly. He always has to be around me. Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to share 3 different phrases that you can take and use in your classroom this upcoming year to really develop student agency and put them in the driver's seat of their own learning. I'm currently finishing up a grad school class all about classroom discourse, and I find it so interesting just to think about the words and phrases that we use in a classroom and what they can do to our own students' thinking and the way they view themselves and their learning in general. One of the books we recently read is this one right here. It's called Choice Words by Peter H. Johnston. And this was such a great book. It's only 100 pages, 99 pages, so it's a really quick read. And also, just so you know, it is on Audible. I read it as an audiobook for my class, and then I took notes on the parts that I liked in the actual physical book, but I'll link this down in the description. And if you like this video, I have a feeling you will really enjoy this book. It's a quick, easy read, and it gets you thinking about those words that you use as the teacher and why they really matter. If you've watched my videos before, then welcome back. And in case you are new here, my name is Susan Jones. I'm a former first grade and K-2 literacy teacher, and now I spend a lot of time here on YouTube making videos, sharing tips, ideas, and activities with K-2 teachers just like you. So go ahead and give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's get started. So the 3 phrases I'm going to share today all have to do with developing student agency. And as Peter Johnston describes at the beginning of his book, having agency is actually a very natural human desire, and that's evidenced by babies and crying. So think about a newborn baby. When they want something or they need something, they cry, and usually their mother or their family, somebody responds to them, therefore rewarding that crying. These babies quickly figure out that when they cry and their families respond, they are in control in some sort of way. But what happens when the family doesn't respond to the crying baby? The baby becomes disinterested. They don't have any agency. They can cry all they want, and nobody's going to come to their rescue. No one's going to figure out what they need. So even from a very, very early on point in our lives, we are all developing agency and wanting control to know that if I do this, then this will happen. And when we're talking about students in the classroom, we want them to recognize that they are in the driver's seat. They are in charge of their own learning. As teachers, of course, we are there to guide and facilitate them along the way, but we are not in charge of their learning necessarily. We want them to really take ownership of that. So phrase number 1 you should start using in your classroom is, how did you figure that out? Now, that whole how did you part is very, very important. When a student successfully completes something, let's say they solved a math problem, instead of just saying, wow, great job, and kind of just patting them on the back, you want to put them in the driver's seat and ask them, how did you figure that out? That gives them a chance to really take ownership of their process and explain what strategy they used and why they think it was successful. Also, if students write a really great paper or they come up with a fun idea, ask them that beginning part, how did you? And then you can say, how did you come up with that idea? Or how did you think of that? Again, this gets students really thinking about what they did and feeling proud of it instead of just showing you, the teacher, their end result and hoping for like a sticker or a good job. This lets them really own the work that they did and also share it with the class. When possible, I like to have students answer this in front of the class or with a small group of students because, again, it's not them just sharing it with you, the teacher, it's them sharing it with the class, and them sharing their ideas can also spark ideas in other students' minds as well. All right, phrase number 2 to start using in your classroom is, let me see if I've got this right, ... And then you want to go ahead and summarize what that student said. Now, this type of phrase is super important for a few different reasons. Number 1, it kind of transfers that power knowledge of who the knower is in the classroom. If you think about a typical classroom, you know, the teacher is the knower of everything, right? And students are like, Mrs. Jones, is this correct? They're always kind of looking to you. And what that does is it puts students at an inferior position, and you want them to, again, develop that agency and recognize that there are often times where they know quite a few things. They know things more than I know things, and we want them to embrace that. So what this does is it lets the students know that me, the teacher, the knower, is going to say, hey, let me see if I've got this right. I'm gonna check with you to see if I understand what you're saying. And when you do this, this really validates their voice. It validates the student's voice, and they also get any opportunity to clear anything up if you misheard them, or maybe the way you repeated it was a little bit incorrect, and they get that chance to correct it for themselves to make sure that you do understand what they're saying. This is also a great phrase to use when you are with your whole group of students, because you as the teacher can revoice and reframe and summarize what that student said in maybe a more academic way. For instance, if they made an inference without using the phrase or term inference, you can go ahead and repeat it and say, oh, let me see if I get this right. I believe, Susie, you made an inference, meaning you took some text evidence and your schema to come up with this idea. And then the student can say, yes, that is what I did. And what you get to do as the teacher is phrase that in an academic way, so you're noticing what they did, you're naming that great strategy that they did, and then you can go ahead and link other students by saying, did anyone else make an inference in the text? Did anyone make that same inference? Did they make a different inference? And students can build upon one another's work. This phrase in particular is such an easy one to kind of build into your rapport, and it's such a powerful one for your students. All right, phrase number 3 to think about using next year in your classroom is the phrase, that's not like you. Now, this type of phrase would be used during a behavior or disciplinary action in that type of way, because what you would do is instead of reprimanding the student, you might use a phrase like, that's not like you. And what that does is it really helps that student form their own identity, because if they're constantly getting reprimanded or redirected or told that they're doing something in the wrong way, they kind of start to assume that identity. Instead of doing that by saying that's not like you, that's letting that student know that you, the teacher, the knower in the classroom, doesn't view them in that way. You view them as this very positive person who makes great decisions and who can make great decisions, and then it lets them think about the decision that they're making and say, well, do I want to keep doing this, or do I want to be, the person that my teacher believes I am and the person that I really can be? Now, I will say that this phrase is much more powerful when the student and the teacher already have a good connection, because if, for instance, you're a substitute teacher and a student starts acting up and you're like, that's not like you, very quickly a student could say, you don't even know who I am. You have no idea who I am. So naturally you want to build up that student-teacher relationship in the first place with a lot of positive affirmations. So that way this phrase is true in what you are saying and you believe it and the student believes it. So there are 3 easy phrases that you can take and use in your classroom next year to help develop student agency. These phrases aren't that difficult, but it does take practice trying to get them into your own teacher talk in a consistent manner. So just to recap, those 3 phrases are, how did you? And then you can say, how did you figure that out? How did you come up with that idea? Something like that. So the how did you by focusing on the process. Phrase 2 is, let me see if I have this right, and then summarize what your students say. And phrase 3 is, that's not like you. And that one is again for kind of a disciplinary or a behavior type of phrase that you might want to try using. I think it's always important to remember that as the teacher in the classroom, we naturally hold this authority over our students, and our words are very powerful, so we want to be as purposeful as we can when we use them. Like I mentioned earlier, these phrases are from the Choice Words book by Peter Johnson, so I linked that down below, and remember it's on Audible as well. So if you want to read a ton more phrases, he has so many good ones in here. He writes out the phrase and then he explains why it is important. And the book is separated into chapters about building student identity and building agency and all sorts of fun things. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up so I know. And if you have made any language shifts in your own classroom, please go ahead and share them down below in the comments. I love reading from other teachers what they're doing in their classrooms. I find that we can learn so much from one another. So drop those down below for us. And next week, I actually am going to share 3 teacher talk moves that we can make that I'm also learning right now in my classroom discourse class. all about getting more out of our students. So stay tuned for next week's video, and I will see you then. Bye guys.